and welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Today on the podcast, we have Kara Cabassa. Kara is the founder of Sealth Well-being and is an intuitive consultant, healer, and well-being guide. She combines all her different modalities. She is also a manifesting generator, and it shows. And she helps support her clients on their journey towards a harmonious, purposeful, and genuine existence. By facilitating deep connections with oneself and fostering a profound understanding of personal patterns, behaviors, preferences, and needs, Kara enables individuals to embark on a transformative path where they can confidently take tangible steps towards cultivating fulfillment, balance, and authenticity across all aspects of their lives, be it personal, professional, or creative endeavors. In this conversation, we talk about connecting with and seeing our ancestors. We go deep into karmic relationships and how that can show up tangibly in our lives. And we talk about how lows can lead us to our healing. In this episode, we focus on a lot of different topics, but in particular, questioning beauty standards and our beliefs around what is or isn't beautiful. If this is a sensitive topic for you, I do encourage listening with caution, but I think we add layers and compassion and grace to the conversation that are important to discuss. Kara has so much to offer, and all her offerings are on her website listed below. So please reach out if you want to work with her. And if you want to work with me, I would love to connect with you. I am especially excited about working with people in the new year, helping them create the routines and structure and connection to their intuition that can really support you to work on your goals, work on becoming your full authentic self, and living intuitively wild. So please reach out if you have any questions, and let us get into this week's episode.
So much for having me. I'm so excited. Such a gift, such an honor. And yeah, my name is Kara Cabassa. I'm founder of Sealth Well-being. I'm Puerto Rican, but grew up and was born in Rhode Island. Coincidentally, not knowing I was Puerto Rican until I was in my 20s. And just thinking I looked different from the rest of the family, like the rest of my cousins. I remember being like 7 years old and being like, Mom, let me see my birth certificate. This can't be right. But always just feeling like I looked a little different, like a little bit of a darker complexion, like different body type, like big curly hair. The rest of my like cousins and stuff. I'm an only child, but like the rest of my cousins, my mom, like, blonde hair, blue eyes. So I was always just kind of like felt a little different. And I was like, oh, that's the missing link.
I can imagine that as a kid that could impact your sense of self or your sense of identity. I'm curious if it had any influence around how you felt about yourself or how you thought how you understood yourself.
For sure. 1,000%. I guess now, and I have been for a while, a pretty confident person, but I know when I was growing up, especially in like middle school, even probably into high school, the definitions of beauty, the standard of beauty were different and are different, right? And so even though I didn't necessarily subscribe to the stereotypical, like, oh, I want to look how like America or how like people think we should look, I like did try to do that. So it was like always trying to be smaller, like always chemically straightening my hair, always like tweezing my eyebrows, stuff like that, for sure.
And when did that shift for you? When did you start to become more confident or just embrace yourself exactly as you are.
I really like beautiful people. And I've always been one to say, like, oh my God, that girl's so fire. Like, she's so fine. Or like, that dude's so hot. Like, oh my God, I like men, but like, I appreciate beauty. I had a lot of like guy friends growing up, and they'd be like, oh, this girl's so hot. And I'd be like, so confused, you know? I don't, is that what's attractive? Like, I was never, I remember like growing up, like, I always thought like watching movies, I never understood the appeal of like maybe like a Reese Witherspoon or like a Jennifer Aniston. I was always like, why are people sleeping on Salma Hayek for so long? Like, I was like, oh my God, she's so hot. Or like Catherine Zeta-Jones, like back in the day. And they're all beautiful, undeniably, but just like a very different look. And so I think when I started to like think about what I found attractive in people, like men and women, just like the things, like the types of eyes I liked, the hair, the like body type, I was like, oh, I'm closer to that than what maybe other people, might deem attractive. And so I think that honestly really, really helped me. And then just becoming, as I spent more time in Puerto Rico, seeing that one, like Puerto Ricans look like everything, right? Like there are like white Puerto Ricans, they're black Puerto Ricans, they're brown Puerto Ricans. And seeing like people, that looked more like me, like with my hair texture, like with my body type, and like seeing that they were so beautiful and confident. I think like that really helped me for sure.
It is so interesting how what we think is beautiful or what we think we should look like is decided by an outside source until we start to question it, until we start to say, what do I actually like? What actually makes me feel confident and embodied and grounded in who I am and what I like versus what other people are telling me. And who's to say that those guys even thought that was attractive, or was that also just something that they were told was attractive?
Yeah.
I think we need to question things more, especially when it comes to beauty standards and appearances.
1,000%. And I think a big thing for me was I'm not someone who I don't love to work out. It's not innate in me to be like, I'm going to go do a 45-minute spin session. I'm going to go to Blank or Planet Fitness and go lift weights for an hour. Like that is not in my innate nature. Granted, I do recognize I feel better when I do work out. But I remember a few years ago at one point, I was like, I want to get strong. Went to a few different trainers, like hated them all. I was like, no, because the immediate thing was like, oh, so it was like, oh, you want to lose weight and this is what you want to look like. And I was like, no. And they were just like, they were just like, confused. And then I found a trainer who I like love, and she's actually like one of my good friends now. She doesn't train anymore, but I showed her this picture. There's this model, Ella Halikis. I follow her, and I just remember seeing, I think right when it was a few years ago now, but right when her Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover came out, I just remember being like, I want her body. And I remember like showing that to the person who I ended up training with. And she was just like, there was no, like, why would you want her body? Or like, it was just kind of like, yeah, sure. Like, let's do it, And so I think like seeing someone like her on the cover of Sports Illustrated was also just like really great because she's stunning.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that representation is everything. And I'm not sure if you know this, but I am in recovery from an eating disorder. So,
know that.
yeah, so working through body image, and I mean, it's been a long journey for me, but that's been such a huge part of my life. And I think it is so important that we talk about bodies and appearances and beauty in different ways. It's just like we have to, you know?
1,000%. And like something I've been learning a lot, like dealing with kind of why I started Sealth and like kind of like my own healing journey. Went through one point a few years ago where I just felt terrible physically and mentally, going to the doctor, and they were running all these labs, and they're like, well, your sugars are a tiny bit high. They're like, nothing was like wrong with me, right? But I just felt terrible. And I went to all these different doctors. This was when I lived in DC for a little bit. I got a personal trainer, I got a nutritionist, and I was so angry. I like hated it. And I was like, what is happening? Is this what people like? And then you see all these like crazy diets, you know? And so I then this led me to like more holistic routes, finding a Chinese medicine practitioner and like acupuncture and like all these things. But something I've learned along the way is, and something that I really hate is we tend to, like, to your very point, judge bodies and people not just on their size, on their appearance. And that is how we deem who or what is healthy. And the crazy thing is, I know women, to your point, who are very small, maybe they have an eating disorder, right? I know women who are very fit, like very athletic. They log every single calorie in a spreadsheet and obsess over it for an hour a night. That is not healthy. I also know people who are big who have diabetes and aren't healthy. I'm not saying there's one way or the other, but I think at the end of the day, the only way you know if someone's healthy is literally looking at their lab work. And so I wish we could come to find a space where it's like there is the physical body, right? Health, there's the emotional body, there's the spiritual body, and how to like we marry those things to get to that holistic health. Like, what does that look like for people? And it's going to be different for literally everyone. And it's going to change for everyone. What worked for me last year. So I found out the end of September, my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 colon and liver cancer. And no, it's okay. And to that point, healthy for a 72-year-old.
Yeah.
And so it's like what worked for me last year in terms of my routine and like my mental and physical health, guess what? Since I found that out, doesn't work. I don't think we can say this works now, it's going to work for the rest of your life, or you're healthy now. Like I feel like it's a constant trial and error kind of. And I feel like you maybe feel like that too. It's like always figuring out, like, your body's going to need different things at different times. Your mind's going to need different things at different times, as is your soul. So it's like, how do we listen to all those components to like give our being what it needs?
There were times when I was so sick and so unwell, and no one had any idea. People were praising me and encouraging me and admiring all the things I was doing, and I was not okay. And
But it's almost like that praise almost makes you want to keep going.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It 100%. And not only does it make me want to keep going, it makes me think, if I let go of this, I won't be accepted anymore. I won't be seen anymore. I won't be wanted anymore.
Girl, preach. I walked my dog to get coffee this morning. And since the end of September, my ass has lost 15 pounds. Not because I'm out here hitting the gym working out, because I'm so anxiety ridden, I can't sleep. And literally someone who I see all the time, I'm like a creature of habit. Walk my dog to the same coffee shop in Brooklyn, get my same iced latte, even though it's 10 degrees outside, whatever. And someone today was like, you look great. And I wanted to hit them in the face. I was like, bro, I haven't slept in 7 weeks. I don't remember when I washed my hair last. I look great. I don't feel great.
And our brain associates great with losing weight. And it's
right. But it's like, but this is not, but it's like, to your point, it's like, it's not like, it's not because I've been eating like eating nourishing meals and like going to the gym. It's like stress.
Yeah.
But people don't take into account, to your very point, what's going on emotionally that impacts the physical.
Exactly. And I will say one thing is that some people do have the experience where their labs are okay, but mentally they're unwell. And
totally.
So I just don't think we should ever comment on people's bodies, especially casually and without knowing. I just don't think it's ever necessary.
Finally understanding, oh, I was Puerto Rican. It helped me, I don't want to say reconcile, but it definitely helped me. Like, I always thought different types of people were beautiful than, I guess, like the standard, right? But now I'm just like I've like, it just made more sense, and it made me feel more comfortable being me. And like, I'm lucky that I was able to do that from, I don't want to say a super young age, but it's not like it, impacted me much past my early 20s.
So you said that you have spent time now in Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
I'm curious, did you pursue that on your own, or is that something that naturally happened with your family? Or how did that unfold for you?
So actually, this is so hilarious when I think about what prompted it. I'm like, you. It was, so I love the beach. I don't know why I still live in New York. Hey, I could sit on a beach 13 hours a day, like put my ass on a beach in the ocean. I hate the cold. It's 74 degrees in my apartment right now, and I have three space heaters on. My dog hates me. I was always trying to take the tropical vacations, like always. And my grandpa, the white side, my mom's dad, they're from North Carolina. And so he lived like, I think it's like an hour outside of Raleigh and Wilson. But then since I was a baby, the house was like older than me. He had they had a beach house in Emerald Isle, a block from the beach. So I just, always grew up every summer I was there. I just always grew up my mom hates the cold. So like we were the family that when my parents were together, like vacation to Florida, like we don't ski, we don't snow, none of that shit. Nope. And so I was dating this really horrible guy, like this awful guy for 8 months. It was the worst 8 months of my life. The first 2 months were fun. And then it should have been done there. He was awful. Tried to break up with him, ropes me back in. And then we were non-committed. And I remember him saying, I'm going to go, this other girl I'm seeing, she's going to pay, like, she wants me to go to Greece and like, she's going to like pay for the trip. I remember saying, like, if you go, like, we're done. Like, if you want to go a free trip to Greece, like, you probably need to make more money because it's not that expensive. And I've been where you're going, but like, okay, go. He goes thinking I'm bullshitting. Obviously, I break up with him. And I was like, fine, you go to Greece. I'm taking my friends and we're going to this 5-star resort in Puerto Rico. No idea. Didn't know anything about Puerto Rico. And it's like, forget it. We're just doing it. And I fell in love with Puerto Rico. And we didn't stay in San Juan, but one night we went out to dinner in San Juan, which was like an hour away. And I was just like, I have to come back here. And this was years ago. And that's when I started to dig into my family history. I did some digging and was like, oh my God, my dad's from the south of the island. Like my dad like is from Ponce, like the south, like all this stuff. And I just fell in love with Puerto Rico. And then since that trip, I've spent so much time there. Like I'm looking to like buy there. Like I love San Juan. Like I'm like learning Spanish. It feels like home. Like, I mean, they have a lot of their own issues. And like with everything that happened during the pandemic, like people driving prices up because of the tax breaks and everything, like there's a lot going on there. But I found it, I think, intuitively. And then Jess was drawn back to it. And get this, talk about intuition, right? You'll appreciate this. On one of my first solo trips there, or no, not even solo trips, I like dragged a friend there. And I always stay at the same place. Shout out La Botanica in San Juan. It's amazing. And and I was like, I love wine, love bubbles, love food. And so I was like, read about this place called Pio Pio in Old San Juan. And I was like, let's just go. It's like a wine champagne bar. I end up hitting it off with one of the owners. It's a husband and wife team, Laura. And she does like the front of house and the wine. And we just end up she's like one of my best friends now. And I stay with her. One of the last times I was there, I go to her mom's condo. Like she's like her husband's like making dinner. He was like a sous chef at Per Se in the city. That's so the Pio Pio kitchen's amazing. And so her mom and her uncle, I don't know, there's like some family members there. And they're like, what's your last name? And I'm like, Cabassa. And her mom just dies. And she's like, the Ponce Cabassas? And I go, yeah. And she goes, oh my God, Laura's dad, his first wife was a Cabassa. And we were like, what?
I love that story. I mean, I I love traveling. And one reason is the people you meet, the culture you experience, the different perspectives. And I think that having that added layer of this sense of identity, it seemed to bring to you, like this sense of connection to something within you, is so special. That's so
Yeah, and that's kind of what opened up everything. Like that, like the first time I ever saw my ancestors was in Puerto Rico.
mm.
Like that's kind of what birthed me accepting and listening to not only my intuitive capabilities, but realizing that like I want to do something outside of tech. Like I want to build something that helps people, helps women of color, that just helps people.
Yeah, tell us more about that. So first of all, you said the first time you saw your ancestors.
Yeah.
So share more about that experience and how that shows up for you now.
So after that first trip to Puerto Rico, I like deep dived into my healing journey. Well, I hadn't dated anyone bad until that guy, I like to call him Shitty Chris, because I have a friend, Chris. It's like everyone knows like Shitty Chris. Um, Feel free to keep that on the podcast, just in case he's listening.
We'll send it to him.
I had dated guys that were, you know, guys, like not, I wouldn't say anyone was like bad per se, like nothing bad, like, you know, none of that. But when Shitty Chris came along, I was like, there's something in me that like it was a karmic. Like I now that I know what it was definitely a karmic. We had a past life, a few. And there was something in me that was why I was drawn to him and why he was drawn to me and why I didn't trust my intuition and why when I think I mentioned I was like at 2 months I should have cut it off and I didn't. And so I went on the search for healers, psychics, experts. And a little bit before this time I had found Kinovo and I was like, I'm going to go to Puerto Rico. Is there someone at this point? She was still in Miami. I was like, is there anyone you know? She recommended me to someone who I will not name for many reasons. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely was one of those things like now that I know what I know, like I personally wouldn't recommend this person or work with her again. But at the time, on my last night there, they did a fire ceremony. It was just me, her, and her husband, and we stayed in this Airbnb. Lit a fire in the yard. I just remember seeing my ancestors come out of the fire. I had never experienced anything like that. And it was just the homecoming to Puerto Rico that I needed. And that was kind of like what sealed the deal for me. I had had other instances of my intuition showing up, and I had that moment where I was like, am I crazy? Like, does anyone like, did they see these people? I was like, what?
But what do you think led to that? Do you think it was because you were going
I was looking for answers. I was going through it was that even though it was a short relationship, he opened up some wounds that were deep in me, like all of my childhood insecurities that I thought I had dealt with, abandonment, worthlessness. Just my heart had never been that broken. And in an effort to make sense of it, I think I just like tried to do like all the healing things. That was like one avenue. That's kind of how I got into it. And I think it was just really trying to understand myself. Like, why is this what I called in? Like, why is this what why didn't I listen to my own intuition? Like, why didn't I break it off at 2 months? Why, I just like wanted answers and I didn't know how to get them for myself. It was like twofold, right? Like, I didn't know how to get the answers for myself. And also, I was just like, I just felt like I knew there was a lot of work I needed to do. And at the time, I didn't even know the word for ancestors. I just knew that these people were somehow that appeared in that fire that were native Puerto Rican. They've been there since.
I think that a lot of us can have these hard experiences, these traumatic relationships, or whatever it may be, and work through it in the sense that we let it go or move on or think that we're healed in some way. But I do think that the deep healing happens when we're really able to look at it and be like, what in me, what was this showing me about myself?
Mhm.
What was this trying to tell me about myself, and how can I really work through that and understand myself better and heal from that?
1,000%. And for me, it was, there were so many issues with my dad growing up that I always thought everything was my dad's fault. And yeah, there was a lot of stuff there, but I realized that actually a lot more of my shit had to do with my mom. And so it was just, it was a really eye-opening experience. And I'm still learning it now. Like, I don't think there's ever comes a time, and like, oh God, maybe this will be the case, but like, I'm not sure if I think there's ever a time where I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm healed. I think it's just like you learn a lesson and you evolve and grow more. And then you're like, fuck, there's another thing to heal. Like, it's just like,
I think
because for me, how I've learned to see life is like, I want to evolve and grow as much as possible in this lifetime so that the next lifetime, I'm going to do the same shit.
that's how I feel too. And I'm a Scorpio rising, so I'm like, just bring it on. Let's do
Yeah, you
it.
are. Yes. And then with my mom having cancer now, it's like, oh, there was still more to heal. So we're going to, as I was pushing off the work, oh, well, now you're on a timeline. So it's you're always going to get given things you need to work on, especially if you're an intuitive person. If I can say like one thing, just do the work. And that sounds so like cliche and shitty because I'm one of the people who even now sometimes I say it and I said it then like, what is the work? Like I meditate, I do breath work, I journal. Like what else do you want me to do? Um, like yeah, there's so many ways to process and deal with things.
I agree. And I do think that there's always more work to do. And I also can get caught up in how can I do the work the best? Like, how can I do the most work? Like, how can I really get in there and do all the things? And I have to remind myself that I can only do what I can in the moment that I'm in. And then when the next layer is meant to come in, like I will be offered a new book, a new teacher, a new feeling. Like we don't always have to seek so much if we just are open to the experience. If we just say, I'm open to learning about myself, I'm open to doing the quote unquote work, like bring it on, the
Yeah.
universe will bring it to us. So I do think that people can get so caught up in what the work is. And I think if we just embrace what comes to us, we will find that there's always work to be done.
Always, always. So wise of you. And patience is something I struggle with. You're 1,000% right. It will come to you. And even though I know that, and I'm like, facilitating and like doing this work now with self, it's still something I personally struggle with. I'll call my soul sisters who are also intuitives and be like, I can't figure this out. And they're like, just calm down. But you're right. Everything in divine timing. Again, cliche as that sounds, but it is so accurate. Like one thing I can say, and like it's something I have to work on literally every single day. And I'm saying this to myself now as well. Like sometimes we just have to give up control and just like be okay with it.
Absolutely.
And
And
just kind of throw our hands up and be like, well, it's all okay. Like, here I am.
exactly. And that's the only way that I can let go, because I am someone who is a seeker, who is a perfectionist, who like wants to have it all figured out. And I can get so caught up in my head. And when sometimes I get so fed up with myself that I'm just like, I give up. Like whatever happens, happens, And I think,
Yeah.
and learning, like we were talking about before, learning from our past experiences gives us the proof that it will happen. If we look from at our past and be like, oh, this worked out for me then, or I had this profound experience then, or like the past can help us make peace with the present or have more acceptance, I find.
1,000%, 1,000% for sure.
So tell us a little bit about Sealth and how you transitioned from the tech world to starting your own business and how that's evolved for you.
Yeah, well, it's a work in progress.
Yes.
I'm actually right now, like, still like looking for a new tech job. I just left the one I was at to focus a little bit more on self and my mom and myself but also it wasn't the right fit. And so South really came about because I like recognized I had these intuitive abilities. Um, I had paid to work with a lot of people, and a lot of them just were not authentic. They, I don't want to say like were jokes, but like I feel like in this like wellness community, it's just about who has the best Instagram or like who looks like a wellness practitioner. And I've worked with so many of those people, and it was just such a waste. And so, outside of like Nikki Novo and Manjeet and one of my other witches, I was like, I'm not paying for anyone else because no one else has been able to help me. And so that's when I was like, how do I help myself? How do I help other people? And so I did soul reading method and graduated and found that, you know, all these things that were happening intuitively to me when I was a child and when I saw my ancestors that time in Puerto Rico, it was, you know, because like those were my gifts that just hadn't been developed yet. And so I really felt like that intuitive ability coupled with other modalities could be really powerful. And so when I had my vision for South, it was really like, how can I combine? I don't want to say productivity, but how can I make like well-being accessible in terms of like it being something that people can incorporate into their lives every day? And so for me, it's like there is that intuitive piece of, and something you mentioned, you said like you think like understanding the past can be so beneficial. And one of my favorite offerings that I do is past lives sessions, because that is what helped me the most. And that is something that like I see, like when I meditate on someone, even if I'm doing something different, I will always see a past life. I also got into different types of meditations, shamanic meditations, energy work. I got my Reiki master certification. I got my breath work and pranayama certification. And I was just like, how can I use all these modalities with my intuition to create something that, because for me, yes, like it is about the physical body, but something I've realized with me, like personally, is that like my body stores and holds emotions. I'm very, as much as I'm emotional, I'm very logical. And it is hard for me to like let go and open up. I've read the emotion code, all those things that everyone's like, oh, it's amazing. And I'm like, they don't work. Like they sound cool, but they don't work. What do I need to do to like help myself, but then help others? And so South was really about well-being for all. How do we make it accessible? And so for me, it's like I teach workshops and classes that are really inexpensive, $20 compared to my one-on-ones. I work with someone at a women's shelter here in Brooklyn and do classes monthly and teach about meditation and breath work. So for me, it was finding ways to, and it is still about finding ways to support myself and support others while still also being able to provide, I think, the tools that are so beneficial and can help people in a way that's affordable and accessible. I remember being really upset when I was in DC and like going through those health issues. I had found this really amazing acupuncturist and it was like really helping me. But to get the benefits of acupuncture, at least for me, I had to go every week. And I changed jobs and my insurance changed. And my acupuncture went from $25 a week copay to I have to pay the full price, 150. But it was like with rent and everything, I was like, I can't do this every week. I started to think about like all these things that, you know, if you don't have the right insurance, never mind if you aren't employed, how people can access these ancient healing modalities that have been proven to work since like the beginning of time.
I resonate with a lot of what you're saying. And I think that people can get so desperate for answers and get so caught up in the appearance of wellness and doubt themselves. And so they look to A, external sources, and B, the picture perfect ideal. And that's not where the answers come. It's finding the way back to yourself. And that often comes with working with guides and teachers like the work you do, the work I do, but it always has to come back to us building that connection to ourselves and trusting ourselves, and also getting off social media and getting off all the wellness tips and tricks. And I mean, I'm on social media, I talk about what I'm doing, and I talk about these things, but it's not about how it looks. Like, I don't want to see a perfectly curated wellness routine, like, I want to see how you actually helped yourself align. Like, I want to learn what works for me personally. And I just think that the cookie cutter, picture perfect wellness aesthetic it doesn't work anymore.
Right. And especially because you have people saying, watching a commercial or doing a YouTube or watching a YouTube and saying, I'm a breathwork teacher. Do you know how many of these people's websites you go to? There's no mention of training.
Yeah.
People think breathwork and pranayama are the same. People think you actually touch people when you do Reiki. Like the amount of like it's crazy to me. And like you see these people, sometimes they have 500,000 followers, a million followers, and it's like they actually, and like that's the thing. I think we're in this space, which like terrifies me. Don't even get me started on politics. I'm not even going to go there, but we're in this space of like where we don't trust ourselves, but we trust someone with a lot of followers because, oh, they must be right and smart. That is not the case. Like, Americans are some of the dumbest people on the planet, fact. But also, like, just critically think. Like, I remember I saw someone that was talking about they were offering like an embodied movement class, and I lost my brain cells. And I had to lecture them on what the word embody meant. And I was like, any type of anything that involves your body is embodiment. I was like, all movement is embodied. Guess what? Breath work is embodied. I was like, somatic literally means of the body. There's no such thing as somatic movement. I was like, if people just took, like, don't pay $50 for a somatic movement class, people. Put a song on your phone and dance in your living room. It's the same thing. Get your girls, go to the club for a night. Like it, and it's just like sometimes we need to really think about of of money as energy. And in terms of, when we think about how we spend our energy and with who, think about that in terms of currency as well, right? Because it's all energy. And so it's like we want to be, if we're trying to elevate and help ourselves and heal ourselves, we really need to make sure the people we're going to are qualified and trained, not just from a YouTube video. And I think that is the first part in how we begin to trust ourselves, is listening to our intuition of who we work with.
Absolutely. And I think that for us, it goes extra deep because we both have a 1 in our profile for human design. So we love the research. We love to go deep. Like, we really invest in what we care about and what we want to bring to the world. And so to see other people just doing the surface level, superficial, phony classes, it's heartbreaking for us. I do think it all comes back to acting in integrity. If everyone was acting in integrity, we all would show up and offer different things in different ways, and different things work for different people. And that's beautiful. But we can't always trust that those offerings are offered with integrity and with the right intentions. And I wish we could, but this day and age, we can't. So we have to really rely on our intuition to tell us who we're meant to work with and what we're meant to invest our energy in, instead of just deciding because they have followers, because they say or this or that we can trust them.
The last thing you want to do is when you're investing in yourself is feel ripped off. It's the worst feeling.
Yeah. And it's happened to me too. And every time I'm like, I should have trusted myself. Every time I'm like, I could have done this myself. If anything, it's showing me that I need less guidance. Like, I need to just listen to myself and follow my own intuition, my own inner guide. Since we're talking about intuition, what is an area of your life that you hope to strengthen your intuition around, that you still feel like you could work on that connection with your trust?
I get things in different ways from my intuition. So like for me, a lot of times I'm a knower, like what they call like a knower. And so I maybe don't get things the way a lot of people get things. So my delivery can be like very matter of fact and direct. And I haven't been able to like articulate like the how I know things per se. And so for me, something I get really hung up on is that like I have my ancestors and I have like one guide, well, like two. One, they function differently. But there was one guide when I first started who appeared to me. And I remember he appeared to me as a wizard. And I haven't been able to connect with him since. And I would like call my friends who like are intuitives and like have really successful businesses. And I'm like, I will have said to them, like, I am blocked. Like I'm blocked. The truth is, like, I wasn't blocked. I was just ready to get things in a different way. And so, like, I remember at one point I was in Egypt this past April on this like very spiritual pilgrimage. Like, we actually got to go into hidden aspects of the pyramids and like do all this stuff. And I remember being in one of the temples or one of the pyramids called the Step Pyramid. And it wasn't like the other pyramids. The other pyramids were really scary to me because I'm claustrophobic and have a fear of heights. So climbing into them, like I did tried to do one and then like couldn't do the others. And there was this one pyramid, I didn't know anything about it. And that whole trip, I just like was feeling really blocked. And everyone was having like they'd, go to these places and they'd just like sob and like just to me like act a little extra. And I was like, I'm a spiritual person. I'm an intuitive. Like, why aren't I feel like what am I missing? And something was like, you have to go to like you're gonna go. I didn't know that this pyramid was different than the others. But just like I'm pretty sure it's called the step pyramid. And something was just like you're going to this one and you're going in it, like no matter what. And something I've been working on a lot lately, which has roots in my childhood, but which I'm just like now working on and kind of piecing together is fear, like the element of fear that lives in my body. And this pyramid was about fear. I learned afterwards.
Wow.
And I went in and within 10 steps started to sob. And one of my soul sisters was on that trip with me. And I just remember just coming out and just sobbing. She's like, it's okay. Like, you're not blocked. And I was like, no, I know. And I just realized, like, I didn't realize, like, I was starting to get things a different way. And so for me, one of the things I want to work on is kind of to your point of like trusting myself, but beyond trusting myself, my path isn't going to be the same as everyone else's. Like I'm going to get things differently. Like yes, I know things and then now sometimes I feel things. I get things differently and I work in different modalities. And I just have to like, be okay with that. Maybe I'm not an intuitive that like goes to their guides or works with their guides every day. And like that's okay.
That's really interesting. I mean, one, you're a manifesting generator, so it makes sense that you move through things quickly and work in all the different ways. But two, I resonate with that because I consider myself a very spiritual person. And at the same time, I've never had a vision. Like I don't hear voices. It shows up for people in different ways. And I think that we can sensationalize spirituality and think that if I'm not seeing ghosts and like hearing voices all the time, then I'm not connected to my guides and my ancestors or whatever, and that's really not how it happens for most of us. Like it happens in so many different ways. And a lot of times it's subtle and it's really nuanced and only something that we can feel. And also it doesn't have to make sense. We don't have to explain how we know things. We don't have to explain why we feel the way we feel. It just is what it is, and accepting and owning who we are and how it shows up for us is the biggest part of it. Another question I have for you, I feel like we've touched on it a bit, but what is something that you've learned to love about yourself that you used to feel shame around?
This sounds so weird. I don't even know if I'm going to phrase this right, but it's feeling shame that I didn't feel more shame. As we've talked about, like there's like definitely this model of like what attractive is and like what it should look like. And especially now with like the Ozempic craze and everyone like the Kardashians, for example, taking out like all their fillers and boobs and butts and like everyone just getting so skinny looking again. There's this idea, and there was, of like, if you don't look like that, you should feel shame and bad about yourself. And I did it at times, but it was never anything that was like so deep that like on some level I didn't recognize my own power. And so I think for me growing up, and even now, when I see some of my friends or some people like really obsessed with like how they look or like fixated on one thing, like I never felt that kind of pressure, and I felt bad about that. Like I was like, what's wrong with me? Do I just not care? Like at one point I remember being like, do I not care if no one loves me because I don't look how I'm supposed to look? But it didn't actually bother me. And so that was like shameful for me. Not actually like what I looked like, but that like I wasn't upset about what I looked like. I had this conversation with someone, two people I know. One is a good friend. One is an acquaintance. They both just recently had weight loss surgery. Basically was like it's hard to move through the world as a big person. And now this other friend, I never saw her as big. And when she said that, I was like, how is it hard moving through life? She's like, you don't feel like you've been discriminated against or anything because like you're like not a small girl. And I was like, no. And maybe that's me being ignorant or me not giving a fuck. I don't know. Could be both, could be either. I didn't really connect the dots until I had that conversation around shame, because I was like, why don't I feel shameful? Because like I'm not skinny. I'm just like, because I just haven't felt that way.
I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, how we are told what to like. We are told how to feel. You are told to feel shame around looking a certain way, when in actuality, you don't. It's not something that we're born with. We're not born with the shame of our bodies, but we are
Right.
taught that. So I think it's amazing that you don't. I think that shows your connection to yourself. I think that shows your dedication to accepting yourself. And I think that shows your ability to kind of tune out the rest of the world.
And I think so many people have learned to not just equate size to health, but size to beauty, irregardless of any other factors,
Yeah.
which to me is wild.
For me, I've noticed that it all comes down to confidence. Like the people I find the most
Yes.
drawn to are the people who are confident.
And the people who are authentic and kind.
Yes, 100%. Who show up as themselves,
Right.
period. Who just show up as
Who are comfortable in their bodies and in their energy.
Exactly. What is something you wish people talked about more, or that you wish you were able to talk about more?
Wellness doesn't look one way, if that's the way I would sum it up, is that like wellness does not look one way. You cannot judge someone's well-being by their physical appearance. You cannot. You can't judge someone's mental health, which is part of their well-being, by their physical appearance. You can't judge it by how much money they make, by their job title, by the color of their skin. And I think that is something that we really, really need to start leaning into, because you can't, their wellness does not look one way, as much as media, both traditional and digital, would like to sell you on what it looks like. Don't buy into that commodity. Don't help commodify wellness. There are enough companies and influencers commodifying wellness. Let's not do that.
I could not agree more. If everyone decided to love themselves right now, so many industries would go out of business, and it would be amazing.
It would be amazing.
Living intuitively wild means living dedicated to your true, authentic self, no matter what. How do you live intuitively wild?
I think for me, it's knowing that I sometimes don't always have the best delivery, but saying what I feel. And if that comes out the wrong way, like, owning up to it and apologizing, but like not holding my truth back. Like I have a really strong voice, just expressing it, even if I'm worried about the delivery, just like getting it out there. Because at the end of the day, someone probably needs to hear it, whether it's about wellness or politics or marginalization or something else. Like using my voice, I was given it for a reason.
I love that. And again, in your human design chart, you are meant to use your voice to
Am
share.
I?
Yeah, to share your emotions and to really just speak from that emotionally driven, heart-centered place.
And I do get so emotional. I'm a Taurus sun and Venus Taurus, but then I'm a Gemini moon and Sagittarius rising.
Wow, lots going on.
That's why I have to take grounding walks every day, meditate every day, breathe every day.
Yeah,
Because if not, I'll combust.
tell us, do you have a ritual or a routine or a consistent practice that helps you stay connected to yourself and your intuition?
Yeah, my typical outside of like the shit show that has been my life since August. But typically for me, it is walks with my dog because I am someone who like I need to ground, I need to be in nature. It's so much harder when I'm cold. So like the winters are really hard for me, but like I have to. I will, and I live in a neighborhood in Brooklyn in Bed-Stuy, which is like very neighborhoody. And there's like a park like a 15-minute walk away. So like I will sometimes I put my AirPods in and I put a meditation on and I listen to it. Sometimes I listen to music. Sometimes I have no AirPods on, but it's just hitting the pavement, like not even working out, just like going for a walk with my dog. And this morning, for example, I did a root chakra meditation and I sat in the park for a few minutes on a bench. I will say in times of stress, so like in August, I got into a massive car accident. My car was totaled. I was in the ER for like 12 hours. September, end of September, my mom got diagnosed with cancer. And then beginning of October, no more tech job. So it's been a lot. And so my anxiety has been through the roof. And so now my routine is like different, like still with the walking. I'm trying to walk a lot more. I'm trying to work out. I'm like just coming back from a cold. So like trying to strength train because I found I really like strength training because it helps me feel strong. And I do try to do a meditation and breath work once a day.
And I think this hits on the point that what we need is always changing. And if we are able to take that space to tap into our intuition and ask ourselves, what do I need in this season of my life? What would serve me best right now? And accepting that it might be different than we're used to, then we can really serve ourselves in the present moment versus just going on autopilot with our routines.
Yeah, 1,000%. Like I switched it up so much in the past few months, and I'm still switching it up.
Okay, so tell everyone how they can find you, what work you're doing now, and the offerings you have.
Yes, people find me. The website, sealthwellbeing.com. Self, like soul health and soul wealth, self, SEALTH. So sealthwellbeing.com. You can also find me on Instagram. I don't post a lot on Instagram, but I'm definitely getting better. In terms of offerings, all can be done virtually or in person if you're in New York. I just launched a new program, which I'm so excited about. You have to try it, Rachel. So like let me know when you're free. Basically it's a 75-minute session. It's called Rebirth Through Release. And that is kind of every modality. I use my intuition and tap into what you need to release to move forward, then guide you through breath work, a fully guided meditation infused with Reiki energy, and then a healing. And so it is an intense, and then I send you off with homework and journal prompts. So it is super intense, but I'm so proud of it and it's so great. I also, of course, offer past live sessions. Again, I meditate. I'll be shown and tell you about a past life or lives that's most relevant to you now. I'm also an herbalist, so I will intuitively get the hit on what herb or flower to work with, as well as use oracle cards. I also do the signature soul reading method from Nikki Novo's soul reading, as well as individual Reiki sessions. and shamanic healing and meditations, and individual shamanic journeying breath work. So a few different offerings, all combined with different types of energy work. My meditations and breath work are also infused with Reiki energy, which can be done virtually. So yeah, and again, of course, just to keep things accessible in terms of like groups and events, there are discounts and it is less expensive that way. But also one-on-ones are great.
Typical manifesting generator fashion, you have all the amazing offerings, and I love it. I mean, I'm the same way. I'm also a manifesting generator, so I get it. Yeah, I will put all the links in the show notes. I highly recommend everyone perusing all the options and feeling out what works and what people feel drawn to, using their intuition to see what feels right for them. And I'm just so grateful for you for taking the time and connecting with everyone today.
Yes, me too. This was like so much fun. Loved it. And I love your energy. You're like so sweet. And this was so amazing. And thank you for having me. And I can't wait to do the offering for you.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.